Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. I'm Kim Santos. If you're new or if you're not new, hey, welcome back. Thank you for coming back. Today's video is one I've done in the past in that maybe you've discovered my channel through those videos, and it is a palette comparison video. In a palette comparison video, I take two eyeshadow palettes and just compare them to one another, regardless if it's the colors that are in both palettes, if they're very similar, the formula, the texture, just the overall packaging. But in today's palette comparison, I'm going to be comparing the James Charles palette with the new ABH Riviera palette. Now these palettes are pretty different and then pretty similar. The only similarity they really have when you first look at them is the color scheme. There's a couple colors in the ABH palette that are very similar to the James Charles palette. Now in this video, I'm going to do an eyeshadow look on either eye of both of the palettes. I think I'm going to use a lot of the colors that look the same on each eye just to see how they perform and what they look like against one another. So we're going to see how those perform, and also I'm going to do swatches, just talking about the eyeshadow palettes in general, their pros and cons of each. But before I get into the video, if you're not already subscribed to my channel, hit the subscribe button, and we're just gonna get into this palette comparison. So the first thing I'm going to talk about in this palette comparison is pricing. So for the James Charles palette, it retails for $39 US and $50 Canadian. And then we have the Riviera palette. Now this one retails for $45 US and $59 Canadian. Now in this portion, I'm just going to do some swatching of the eyeshadow palettes. I'm going to swatch a good amount of the Morphe shadows on my arm compared to the ABH ones, more so the ones that are very similar in the palette, just so you can get an idea of what they look like to one another. And then also I'm going to swatch some of the shades that look really identical to one another. Like this shade Bahamas in the Riviera palette looks very similar to the color Skip, this one right here in the Morphe palette. So I'm just going to show you some of the swatches now. So on this arm, I have some of the Morphe shadows because my arm did not have the space to swatch 39 eyeshadows. And now on this arm, I have the ABH Riviera eyeshadows. I swatched all the eyeshadows in the palette just because I could fit 14 shadows on this arm. And then these are the eyeshadows swatched compared to one another. The top arm, this one right here, is the Morphe shadows, and the bottom arm is the ABH shadows. So what I can tell right off the bat is the shimmers in the ABH palette are definitely more creamier and they're more pigmented than the Morphe ones. But the Morphe ones still have pigment to them, just not as much as the ABH, which was to be expected. And then some of the ABH mattes swatched a little bit more smoothly and more pigmented, once again because of the formula. And the Morphe ones came out a little bit more patchy than the ABH shadows did for some of the mattes. So now I'm going to swatch some of the eyeshadows that looked really similar to one another. So like I was saying before, this hot pink shade Bahamas, this one looks very similar to Skip. So I'm just going to swatch that, and I'm going to put it on the back of my hand, and we're going to compare the two up close. Now I'm going to take Skip, I'm going to swatch that on this finger, the middle one. So like I was saying, this one is the shade Skip, and this shade is Bahamas from the Riviera palette. Skip is just a little bit lighter, more of a pastel neon, and Bahamas is a little bit more of a true dark magenta hot pink. And the Bahamas shade is more pigmented and smoother. The next two shades I'm going to be comparing is the shade Canes, and then from the Morphe palette, I'm going to be comparing these two purples, the shade Single and also the shade Escape. I feel like the shade Escape is definitely a dark purple, but I just want to see what they all look like against one another. So these are the two Morphe shades. The darker one is Escape and the lighter one is Single. And I'm just going to swatch these two right here. Now I'm going to take Canes, grab that, that's this one right here, and I'm going to apply that right next to Single. So this shade is Canes from the palette. It's definitely the most pigmented and smooth. The second one is the shade Single from the Morphe James Charles palette. And then the last one is the shade Escape from the Morphe James Charles palette. I definitely think Escape is closer in comparison to the shade Canes. It's definitely the darkest, but all three are beautiful purples, but you can definitely tell once again just how smooth the ABH formula is. Now the next two shades I'm comparing direct to one another is the shade Sales and the shade Flashback. This one over here is a shade Flashback from the Morphe palette, and this one over here is Sales from the ABH. Now in this round, I think Flashback is definitely more pigmented than Sales. White eyeshadow shades are kind of hard to get. They can kind of look chalky and maybe not the most pigmented, but I'm definitely impressed by the Flashback shade in the Morphe palette compared to the ABH one. Now I'm comparing the shades from the Morphe palette, Blank Canvas. It's the lighter of the two, and then also compared to Estate from the ABH palette. Definitely Estate is more of like an corally, like it has more of like a warm coral undertone. Blank Canvas is very beige, like a hint of white even, compared to Estate. In the pans, they definitely look a little bit more similar than they do swatched, but that's Blank Canvas and Estate compared to one another up close. And then the next two I'm comparing to one another is Hello from the James Charles palette versus Seychelles from the palette. It's definitely more of a darker tealish blue compared to Sky Blue, a little bit more pearlier. So that is Hello and Seychelles compared up close to one another. So now that I've kind of compared all those different swatches of the colors and the palettes to one another, I'm going to zoom you in onto my eyes, and I'm actually going to start the whole eyeshadow tutorial part of this video just to see how the shadows work with one another and create two kind of similar but different looks using both of the palettes. On this side of my face, I'm going to be using the ABH Riviera palette, and then on the other side of my face, I'm going to be using the James Charles palette. So I just tied my hair back. I don't know if you guys can tell, but I'm just feeling under the weather. I've been feeling sick, like my voice is very groggy, and I don't have too much energy, but I still wanted to make this video. So I thought I'd just say that, because I don't think I've said it in the video so far as to why I kind of sound a little stuffy and yucky. But I'm going to do this side of my face, so we're going to use the ABH palette. So I'm going to first go in with the shade Estate. And as well, I haven't set my eyelids just because I've been finding that my eyeshadows look a little bit better when I don't set my lid before I go in. So that's why I have a lot of creasy concealer. I find my eyes just crease like nobody's business. But I'm using that Estate shade, so I'm just going to put that all over that area. So now I'm going to be using the shade Bahamas, that really intense hot pink shade. I'm going to pick it up on my brush, and I'm just going to put that all over. And once again, I forgot to put powder underneath my eye. I did that in my last video, but I'm just going to do that just in case if there's any fallout. You just got to take some precaution. I know some ABH shadows can have some fallout. I'm now going to take the purple shade Canes and put that kind of in the C shape of my eye, just in the corner to deepen out this eye look. So I put down the Canes shade. I think I'm going to just do a half cut crease. And I want to put gold and blue on the lid because this gold shade, Inheritance, is so pretty in the Riviera palette. So far, I have no fallout with the matte shadow, so that's pretty good. I am going to be going in with a shimmer now, so we'll see how that goes. I'm going to be using this gold shade called Inheritance. Is that how you say it? I'm sorry, I'm so congested, I can't speak at all. But I'm going to put this kind of halfway through the half cut crease. So I'm going to I opened my eye. So I just ruined my cut crease. I don't like cutting my crease all the way up because then I feel like it looks way too high, but that's like my eyelid, right? Like it's just... So I put Inheritance on. Now I'm going to go in with that blue shade Seychelles, and I'm going to kind of put that on as well. So now the center is kind of looking green, which is really cool. Now I'm going in with Canes, and I just kind of want to blend out the edges of Seychelles as best as I can. It might be difficult because it is a shimmer shade. I feel like my eye looks like you know, Dragon Tales? Like, you know the rock from Dragon Tales? I feel like that's what this eyeshadow look kind of is giving me right now. Shadows are pretty easy to work with. They are ABH, so I've worked with them before. It's not like I'm new to this eyeshadow formula. And the nice thing about this formula is anyone can use it. Even like a really fresh new beginner to eyeshadow would be able to work with this palette a little bit more, a little easier than if you were to use the James Charles, just because I've used that one in the past, and there's some techniques that you really have to apply. So in terms of fallout, after I've used some of the shimmer shades, especially the Seychelles one, I've noticed some fallout over there, but naturally that's what happens when I've used ABH shimmers in the past. And just in general, when you use shimmers, you'll always get fallout more than matte, depending how pigmented it is. But so far, that is the Riviera side, and I'm really happy with it. So now we're gonna move on to the James Charles palette side. So I'm gonna go in with the shade Blank Canvas just to start off the look. I'm using a fluffy brush. Now, I think I wanna do a full cut crease with this look. The looks I'm creating with this palette are definitely not everyday look that you could use with both of these palettes, but I wanted to use the colors that looked the most similar. These palettes are known more so for the bright colors in it more than the neutrals. So I'm going to be using the shade Skip, the one that's similar to Bahamas, on this side of my eye with the Morphe palette. I'm just going to put this all over the area. When you use the James Charles palette, you have to pack on the color and then blend to get the best payoff, if you know what I mean, right? It's just a technique that you kind of have to adapt to and learn while using the palette, but it's definitely something to keep in mind if, you know, depending your eyeshadow skill or what you're comfortable with. I know for myself, sometimes I don't want to take the extra step, especially if I'm trying to do something quick while doing a makeup look. So that's something to, you know, consider. Now I'm gonna mix these two purple shades, both Single and Escape, and put that kind of into the whole eye socket area because I want to do a full cut crease and put the blue in the center. I think what I'm going to do on this eye is do a full cut crease, but I'm going to put that purple shimmery shade and also the Hello light blue shimmery shade on that lid. So I'm going to take this shimmery shade right here called Artistry. It's a shimmery purple, and I'm going to put that on the cut crease part, but I'm also going to blend it in with this Hello shade. This shimmery shade, I feel like I have to use a little bit more than I did with the ABH palette. Low-key, this eyeshadow look is kind of looking like a Jessica Rabbit eyeshadow tutorial. And I'm going to take that Hello shade, that blue, and I'm going to put it in the center. So now I'm just going to put some lashes on and mascara, and then I'll be back and I'll do the lash line with the palettes as well. Okay, so now that I've put some lashes on, I'm going to go to the ABH side and I'm just going to do the bottom lash line. I'm going to pick up the shade Canes and I'm just going to put that all along the lash line here. And then I'm going to take a little bit of Bahamas and put that towards the tear duct. And then I'm going to use the white shadow called Sails, and I'm going to put that on the brow bone. And just sneak that right under there. Just a little bit on my crazy, messy, bushy brows. Then I'm just going to put a little bit of bottom lash mascara. So that is the Riviera Eye Complete. So now I'm going to move over to the James Charles palette side, and I'm going to be taking Skip on my brush and running Skip all along my bottom lash line. Ooh, getting into my eye. I'm going to take the shade Escape and put a little of that as well. Then I'm going to use the white eyeshadow from the James Charles palette, the shade Flashback, and I'm just putting that on my brow bone as well. I'm also going to put a little bit on my inner corner. I didn't put anything on my inner corner in the ABH palette. I feel like I used more shadows on that side, so I might as well put something on my inner corner. And then some bottom lash mascara. So these are the final looks. This side, the ABH Riviera, and then this side, the James Charles and Morphe palette. So now I'm going to zoom out and give you my final thoughts on both of the palettes. So these are both the looks further away. I love how both of them turned out. But anyways, so my final thoughts on these palettes, the packaging. I love ABH palettes, like they're really nice. They always use like a fabric when they make their palettes, so this palette is gonna get dirtier, and because it's white and has like a texture to it, it's not gonna be easy to clean or wipe off. Versus the James Charles palette, it's like a regular kind of plastic. If it gets dusty or dirty with makeup, you can just wipe it off and it's clean once again. So I like that. For traveling, that's kind of a bit of a toss-up for me because the James Charles palette, it is very thin, but the thing is it has a large surface to it versus the ABH is definitely smaller, but in terms of thickness, the ABH is definitely thicker. But the Riviera palette does come with a mirror and the James Charles palette does not. You do get more colors, so it kind of is up to you. This sister over here, she is more of quantity. You are getting endless amount of options of color when you purchase this palette. Unlike the James Charles palette, this sister over here is about quality. Now you're getting less shadows, but the quality of the ABH shadows is better than Morphe, and that's just kind of a fact. When you're paying for an ABH eyeshadow palette, you're paying for the quality of the pigments, the smoothness, and the blendability. The James Charles palette, the eyeshadows are not bad. That's not what I'm trying to say here. I'm just saying you have to work with the shadows a little bit more carefully than you would have to with the ABH. The ABH ones, I just kind of put them on, I blend them. The James Charles ones, you have to pat them on and then blend over top. It's just two different techniques. One's a little bit quicker versus this one, which you have to learn a little bit. So it's hard to say which palette's better because they're both good in their own way. But if I was to choose only one of these palettes, I would probably go with the Morphe James Charles one just because I like to have a lot of options when I'm creating my makeup looks. So I think this one would be better suited for me, and plus I've learned the technique. I've kind of learned how to build and blend the shadows out. But this one is good for individuals who maybe even don't want all of the colors of the rainbow. They don't need the greens and the reds. If you just wanted a palette with some like pinks and purples and other bright shimmery colors, then this one would probably be better suited for you. But that's kind of it for this comparison video, guys. I hope you enjoyed. Sorry I was feeling a little bit under the weather. I probably could have been a little bit more thorough in this video, but I just wanted to get it up. And I've been meaning to do this video for a while, so I hope you enjoyed. Once again, thank you so much for watching. I really do appreciate it. And like always, remember, sub it if you love it. I will see you in the next one. Goodbye.